Well, hello, and I'm Tony Howard with Astrology University, and I'm here with Jason Holley, who's going to be doing a webinar for us on Pisces, Myth and Psyche, coming up in March of 2017. This will be March 4th. It's a Saturday morning in the North America. The Pacific time, 9 a.m. So tune in if you can. Jason's here to tell us a little bit about what he has in store for us. So welcome, Jason.
All right, thanks. This is a webinar that's kind of part of a series that looks like we'll be doing on the mythology behind the constellations that we associate with the signs. And so we'll be looking at actually the stories that are behind the different signs. You know, many astrologers are familiar with myth in different levels, and particularly like myth of the planets is pretty well known, or the planetary archetypes like the gods and goddesses as figures. But this will be looking more at the stories, because every one of the signs has one or many stories associated to it. And so we'll be taking a look at that and then using that to pull that through to sort of some of the to give us more understanding of how the sign works psychologically, like particularly psychodynamics. So more than just attributes and traits, we'll actually be looking at processes and situations and stories that can kind of constellate in the lives of people with that sign strongly emphasized. And then taking that, so going from the mythology to that psychology, and then taking that and looking at it in some, as a rule, these will include, some case studies drawn from my work as a therapist, to show how some of this plays out. So the approach is a little bit different than the way people usually approach myth, because it's often, we sort of look at a bunch of stories and then sort of synthesize a set of attributes or traits, so we look at 5 or 6 stories of Venus and then kind of just check off a checklist. This is going to be much more about looking at the myth, kind of the way that one would work with a dream. So you wouldn't just sort of sum up the dream with 2 words, or maybe you would. But then you'd also look at all these little subplots in the dream and all these little moments that make it much more rich. And it's pretty amazing what the constellation myths offer. And most astrologers I know don't actually know the story, or if they know it, they just know it in one sentence. And so what I'm wanting to do is help kind of double click on all kinds of different parts of the myth and expand those out, and then think about what it tells us about each sign.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we got this idea to do this series. Well, I got the idea to invite you to give one of the first lectures here. We did a lecture on the Leo archetype that was based on a lecture you gave at the NORWAC conference, and that was such a great lecture. And the feedback we've gotten from that lecture has been really great as well. So the myth really does connect you to something deeper. And one of the things I found when you were giving that webinar is that the myth not only kind of expands the archetypal understanding, but it gives people tools for how to respond to certain things that might arise based on how characters in the myth responded and how well or not well that worked out for them. So, right. On that note, can you maybe share an example of a little tidbit from the Leo webinar, just as an example for folks to see what we're talking about here?
Yeah, definitely. The Leo, the lion in the sky is the Nemean lion, who was the first of Hercules' labors, was to go and slay the Nemean lion and bring back his hide. And so there are a lot of different moments in that story, but one of the ones that sort of comes out for me thinking about it right now is that when Hercules is going to do this, the Nemean lion is this bigger, larger than life lion. It's huge, and no one's able to kill it because they can't penetrate the hide. If they throw a spear or shoot an arrow or something, and so Hercules gets the idea of approaching it a little bit differently. And the Nemean lion lives in this cave that is in a mountain, except the cave is unusual in that it has an entrance and an exit, so it sort of goes through the mountain. And so Hercules plugs up one side of the cave and then goes in and actually just does this with hand-to-hand combat. He just wrestles with the Nemean lion, like very just up against it. And it's this, total clash. And actually, when you look at a lot of the art and the sculpture of that encounter, you can't really tell that they're fighting, kind of like wrestling can sometimes look like people are just groping each other. And there's this sort of merger that seems to be going on. And this is how Hercules supposedly conquers the man lion. And then he takes the hide back with him. And then he does this other thing, which is to put the hide on his body. And then from here on forward, he becomes known as, always you see him in any kind of representation. He's got the hide, and then he's got the mouth of the lion closed over him, like that. And the thing about this that gets interesting is to think about Leo as partly a sign where the person is contacting this really raw, primal, archetypal energy, this sort of powerful energy like the sun, or that kind of direct archetypal affect, and sort of seeks to merge with that and sort of become that. And that's part of that charisma that we see in Leo, that can sort of channelize that. But at the same time, then you get identified with that, like I am the king, or I am the hero. I am the great worker, I am the bad one. I mean, sometimes the identification is to something hard, but that's kind of one example of sort of what people can do. And it goes right to your point about, options that we start to see, because one of the tricks about that hide is that it is impenetrable. And what happens to people with strong Leo signatures when they do become identified with an archetype, they become kind of impenetrable to other people. So you end up a bit alone inside the hide. And so what are the options for not always wearing that? Would be a kind of an opportunity in that story, right, where you don't just try to be that and get an identity through that external thing, but you actually also are willing to be human, not just heroic.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing, that these open up, and they open up a lot of, and that's just, one part of the story. That's the details in the stories. That's what I would want people to know. Like, we may know the story in a line or two or the basic highlights, but we were really going more in for action moments, which then become plot. It's more like we're looking for the plot than the figure. With a planet, we look at the figure, but with the sign, we're looking at plot dynamics and how those very same dynamics are intrapsychic or interpersonal dynamics that happen when those signs are, strongly transited or in the natal chart.
Right. Super interesting. Well, I can't wait to see what you do with every single one of them. And like we said, the next one we have up is March 4th, Pisces. So tune in if you can. You can find the link to sign up at astrologyuniversity.com there on the homepage, or if you just click the link for the webinars or the event calendar. So thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Thank you.
Giving us a little preview, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks.